What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Welcome to Packers Game Day. Packers Chiefs, the last game of preseason, the last game until Packers Vikings regular season in a couple weeks. It's all going to go very fast. We're going to have roster cutdowns, and I'm sure Brian Gutekunst will be very active in managing the 53-man roster and 16-man practice squad up until the point where we have the practices right before the game and an injury report. And before you know it, it'll be the Packers taking on the Vikings in Minnesota. But before we get there, we've got to play this game first. So today's going to be pretty basic, and we're going to be going over all the things that I'm going to be looking for as the Packers take on the Chiefs in this last preseason game. I actually think that there is a decent amount to be watching for in this game. I don't think this is just a throwaway game where you're like, all right, the 53 is mostly decided. I think there's some real interesting roster positions and battles that are still up for grabs that are definitely worth monitoring here. So we'll go through all of it. Some of these are going to be very similar to the preview shows that we've done before and talking about a lot of the same topics, trying to put a little bit of a different spin on it. But some of the things that we've been watching for in preseason game 1, preseason game 2 are a lot of the same things that we'll be watching here in preseason game 3. But I still want to go over it because I still think as people get into, second, third, fourth quarter of a Packers Chiefs third preseason game, I know some people might be wondering, all right, who should I be watching for here? So that's what I sort of want to accomplish today. And of course, as has been the case in preseason game 1 and in preseason game 2, the number one thing that I'll be watching for is Jordan Love. But this is a bit different. All right. Game 1 was like, all right, it's been a year, well, not quite a year because we saw Jordan Love at the end of last year, but like, what does Jordan Love have for us in store in year 3? And then game 2 was like, okay, we saw some okay things. We saw some bad things in game 1. Can he rebound in game 2? And can he build off of some of the success that we saw in practice against the Saints during the week? And can he have a good game 2? The answer was yes. Now, in game 3, what I want to see is sort of like the ending of this offseason story for Jordan Love. I want to see him put everything together that we've seen from a positive standpoint and put together, whether he gets 2 quarters, 3 quarters, whatever he gets, put together his most complete performance to date. I want to see him take good care of the football. I want to see him throw accurately. I want to see him throw with confidence. I want to see the best version, of his fundamentals up until this point. And I just want to see him have control of the game to an extent and just a consistency that we maybe haven't seen totally yet from Jordan Love. And to me, if he can put the cherry on that Sunday, if he can put all of the things that we've sort of seen him grow through the course of this offseason, from OTAs to mini camps to training camp to family night to preseason, all of it, and put this nice little bow on everything at the end of preseason, that would be huge. On the flip side, if we see Jordan Love take a step back and have a really rough game and the fundamentals are all over the place, he's, still throwing inaccurately on some of the layups that he should be completing, if he's making more poor choices, then that would be a pretty significant step back, in my opinion, in his development. Does it mean a whole heck of a lot in a preseason game where the defense is probably playing pretty darn vanilla? You don't have your starters in, they don't have their starters in. No, it's not. It's not everything, but in that situation, you would like what I would love to see is Jordan Love be the best player out on that field, because I would just like to see him with the talent that he has put everything together and go out and say, we're going to go win this game because I'm freaking Jordan Love and I'm the best player in this game. That's what I want to see. I want to see that confidence. I want to see that killer mentality. That would be, in my opinion, a massive, massive step for Jordan Love. So whatever that may be, whatever comes out of this, I think is going to be somewhat of a story. Whether it's, okay, he took another step, which would be massive. He took a step back, he took a major step back, or even if he just stayed status quo, I think either way we're going to glean a little bit more out of Jordan Love and what he's sort of done in totality in this preseason and in this offseason so far. So I think coming off of a Saints practice last week and a Saints game where he put together 2 really great back-to-back days, I think there's optimism with Jordan Love. This is his opportunity to go out and prove it and show everyone, hey, I am either just about ready or ready to become a starting quarterback in this league. Whether he actually is or not, and whether that's going to take a little bit more time will remain to be seen, but I want to see him go out and have his best performance. And like I said, just kind of put everything together that he's done in this offseason so far. Put all the things, that the coaching staff have been putting in his ear, the things that he's been working on with Aaron Rodgers and Tom Clements, etc. I want to see him have his best overall performance. So that is 1A of what I will be looking at in this game. Number 2, special teams. And goes without saying, right? If there's any one unit in this game that we can actually maybe see the biggest signs of like actual regular season type performance, it could be special teams. Now, Rasul Douglas and Eric Stokes and, Adrian Amos and some of those sort of guys have been fixtures on special teams and practices, and we're clearly not going to see those guys. And there's going to be guys that maybe they think are semi-core special teamers or have been so far that probably end up getting released and not on the 53-man roster too. So it's not a finished product. We don't have Mason Crosby yet. Like, some of those things are still going to come as we get to Packers Vikings in a couple weeks. But it's, clearly the defense is going to have almost all of their starters out. Offense is going to have almost all of their starters out. And it's the special teams that this is still going to be the vast majority of the guys that are playing special teams will be playing in this game. So if there's one unit to sort of focus on and be like, okay, like at least 50, 60, maybe even more than that % of the players who are going to be playing on teams are probably playing in this game, that to me is a little bit more interesting. And really, this is the last dress rehearsal for the Packers and this special teams unit that has been so bad in seasons past to get ready for Packers Vikings week 1. And it hasn't been great so far, right? We've seen numerous mistakes and miscues and missed field goals and botched punts, and like all of those things have sort of still reared their ugly head, right? So I'd love to see a little bit more consistency out of this special teams. Let's see what Amari Rodgers can do as a returner. Do they give anyone else a chance? Just all of it, right? I want to see better protection. I want to see better gunning down the field. I want to see better returns. I want to see all of it. I just want to see a bit more consistency from the special teams unit to give any sort of confidence that the Packers can go into Minnesota and be like, okay, we feel good about the special teams. I don't feel that yet from the first 2 games. Like I said, this is the last dress rehearsal before Packers Vikings. Really want to see what they can do in this game and if Rich Bisaccia can get another level out of this special teams. Number 3, the edge rusher battle. I will be darned if I could tell you who of the 4 pass rushers after Gary, Preston, and Kingsley Enagbare are ahead in this battle. Out of Tipa Naliai, Jonathan Garvin, Kobe Jones, and Ladarius Hamilton, you could tell me any story of any of the 4. You could tell me that any of them were on the 53-man roster. You could tell me any of them were off the 53-man roster. You could tell me that none of them were back with a team. You could tell me that a team traded for one of the players. Like, I have no idea what to expect and where Green Bay will go. I know special teams will play a very major role in this, which would lead me to believe that maybe Tipa has a little bit of a heads up here, over the other 3. But, man, I have no idea what direction they could go in. As I sort of said the other day, maybe they just release all of them and know that they're going to get at least 2 or 3 of them back in the practice squad and just elevate as needed. Like, they could go in so many different directions. But for Tipa and Garvin and Jones and Hamilton, this is their last opportunity to impress and say, hey, you better not cut me because some other team will claim me. I am going to go out and ball out in this game. I'm going to get a sack or 2. I'm going to get consistent pressure. I'm going to set the edge. I'm going to make an impact on special teams. This is their moment to shine. Those 4, there's no more Chauncey Manak. They've already let him go. Those 4 guys, along with Enagbare, are going to play almost the entirety of the game, right? So this is a huge opportunity for those 4 players to try to go out and put their final stamp of approval. At different points of this offseason, Tipa has looked really good, and then he kind of quieted down. Garvin looked really good for like a week and a half, and then quieted down. Kobe Jones had like a breakout week and a half. He's kind of quieted down. Ladarius Hamilton had like a breakout week and a half, and then he quieted down. So if any of these guys want to go and have that, hey, don't cut me moment, now is the time to do it. And I think this is probably one of the more fun position battles to really dig into in this game because, again, they could go in any direction with any 4 of these guys, and it would not shock me at all. Number 4, this is a little bit of a fun one, maybe unfair one. Label it what you will. Devontae Wyatt was picked 28 overall. George Karlaftis was picked 30th overall by the Chiefs. A lot of people, myself included, thought Karlaftis would be absolutely somebody the Packers would be interested in at pick 28. They lost Zadarius Smith. They lost Whitney Merciless. At the time, Tipa, Garvin, Kobe Jones, Ladarius Hamilton weren't exactly, anyone that you were writing home about to be like, all right, any of those guys could be your number 3. Now they hit nicely on Kingsley Enagbare in the 5th round, it seems like, but it seems like if the Packers would have went George Karlaftis at pick 28, that would have made a ton of sense. And he fits their athletic, thresholds. He hits their age thresholds. He hits a position that was of need. He hit a position that usually in the first round they pick out of premium positions, and he's a premium position player as an edge rusher. I mean, George Karlaftis had everything that the Packers usually look for. The only thing he didn't was short arms. That is one thing that Green Bay likes, is longer arms, and Karlaftis' arms are a little bit short. But if you would have told me that the pick was between Karlaftis and Wyatt just based on Gutekunst's history, I would have been like, oh, they picked Karlaftis 100 times out of 100. There's no way they went Wyatt in a 24-year-old rookie. That's just usually not in their DNA. But they go Devonte Wyatt at pick 28 at a position that now actually looks like it has really good depth, and where edge rusher still behind Gary and Preston, you still have some question marks, right? So not to mention the fact that Karlaftis has had sacks in back-to-back weeks in week 1 and week 2 and has looked really good in practice. He's earned praise from a variety of Chiefs players, fans, coaches, etc. He looks really good. In the meantime, Devonte Wyatt has been off to a very quiet start. So that means nothing at this point. Devonte Wyatt could go on to have a Hall of Fame career. George Karlaftis could be out of the league in 3 years. We know nothing at this point, right? But to this point, Karlaftis has looked good. Wyatt's been quiet. And again, if you would have told me at draft time which one of those guys they picked, I would have said, no question about it, they picked Karlaftis. They didn't. They went with Wyatt. And this is sort of one of the unique in-game one-on-one battles. Who has a better game? Does Karlaftis go out and get a couple sacks? Does Wyatt go out and make a big impact? You would like to see Green Bay and Wyatt maybe have a little bit more of an impact than he had this past week against the Saints. But this is only his second time with in-game action. Hopefully he can make some improvements from a week ago and start making those flash plays that we know he is capable of. Number 5, Tyler Goodson, Patrick Taylor. Whether or not they keep 3 running backs will remain to be seen. Maybe they keep 4, maybe they keep 2, who knows? But if I were a betting man, even though I really like the 2 running back idea, I think I would bet that they go with 3 running backs, and I would also bet that it's either Tyler Goodson or Patrick Taylor. And I think that position is really up for grabs, and I think what Green Bay is going to want to see out of Tyler Goodson, pass protection and special teams ability. And I think what they're going to want to see out of Patrick Taylor is a little bit more dynamic running the football. He's shown off a little bit of ability on special teams. He's shown his ability to pass protect. He hasn't been that dynamic of a runner. And at some point, if you're a running back on a NFL roster, you have to have some dynamic ability to go out and make plays and get yards, right? I haven't really seen that so far this offseason. I've seen it in the past from Patrick Taylor. Haven't seen it this offseason or this training camp, preseason, etc. from Patrick Taylor. So would like to see a little bit more, dynamic play out of him. Would like to see a little bit more emphasis on the fundamentals, pass protection, keeping his pads low, and just the special teams from Tyler Goodson. If either of those guys can do that, they're going to put themselves in a much better position to be the guy that gets that number 3 running back position. And even if both guys end up on the practice squad, one of them's got to be elevated on game day for that number 3 running back. Even if they both end up on the practice squad, they both could be competing for that number 3 running back job, even if it's just from a call-up as a practice squad player. Number 6, do we get Christian Watson's debut? I think we will. Green Bay could could use an abundance of caution here as well and maybe give him one more week and just say, hey, what is it really going to matter? But he warmed up a week ago against the Saints at home. And then when when they were doing walkthroughs at the end of practice, the very first offensive unit, that wasn't on scout team, Christian Watson was in there. So I would believe that he plays in this game. And if he gets the all clear from medical, if he's going to play per Matt LaFleur. So this could be our first look at in-game action of Christian Watson. And that's very fun. So I will definitely be watching that. Number 7 is Samori Toure. Listen, that wide receiver math gets really, really difficult. And it would seem on the surface that they could keep 7 and Samori Toure would be the odd guy out if they can't keep 8. Maybe Toure makes it over Winfrey. Maybe they figure out a trade somewhere. Who knows? But as of right now, I don't, it's going to be tough to keep 8. And I think if they can't keep 8, Toure would probably be the odd man out, with the idea that they would get him back on the practice squad. But there's no guarantee of that. If Samori Toure wants to go out and lock up a roster spot and say, hey, you can't cut me, well, go out and have an awesome game. And he's shown flashes of that already. He's caught, some incredible passes in family night and in practice. And I think this is a real opportunity for him to have, what could be a shining game for him and put his stamp on it and say, hey, you better not cut me because there's a good chance I could get claimed. I have that level of talent. So very much we'll be watching him. Along the offensive line, number 8 is Caleb Jones and Rasheed Walker. Caleb Jones has been one of the real surprises as an undrafted free agent. And meanwhile, we haven't seen almost any of Rasheed Walker as a 7th round pick. This could be one of those scenarios where, Green Bay's thinking right now, all right, we there's no way we can keep Rasheed Walker. He's been hurt. We haven't even seen anything out of him. I know he's a 7th round pick, but how are we supposed to keep this guy? All of a sudden, if Rasheed Walker goes out and has just a dominant game and nobody touches the quarterback and he, from his side of things, and he dominates as a pass protector and goes out and run blocks really well, it could be one of those things of like, okay, that tape was just too good. And now if we cut him, somebody's going to claim him, right? So like, this could be an option for, Rasheed Walker to prove himself, and just more importantly for the Packers and for us as fans to get to see why Green Bay selected him in the 7th round. As I've mentioned previously, this is a player that most people thought Green Bay got a massive steal on in the 7th round. Right now, I think it's going to be very tough for him to make the team, but this could be his real opportunity to go out and show himself and prove himself. So Caleb Jones, Rasheed Walker, the 2 tackles, definitely will be keeping an eye on both of them. Along the defensive line, Jonathan Ford and Jack Heflin. There's a chance that Green Bay could just go with 5 defensive linemen and neither guy make the roster. But if they do go with 6, this is the battle, right? Your 7th round pick, Jonathan Ford, versus your undrafted 2nd-year player in Heflin. Heflin's been the better player. Jonathan Ford has the higher upside. So that is always a fun push and pull of what do you want to do? Heflin can help more right now. Jonathan Ford could be much better down the road. It's just, not exactly apples to apples. It's not always a fair fight here. So I don't even know. I think you go potential in this case because you don't really need your 6th guy to go out and play. And I think there's a better chance that you can get Heflin back on your practice squad. I don't think either guy gets claimed, but I think you probably keep your pick and then let the undrafted guy make it to the practice squad and call him up as needed. But that's an interesting battle. And if one of them has an awesome game, that could, again, put them at the driver's seat for that last final 6th defensive lineman if Green Bay wants to go in that direction. So Heflin's had a very nice camp. He looks much more spry and he's much more physical at the point of attack. So I don't know that they want to necessarily release either of these guys, but it's definitely a fun battle and one that I'll be keeping an eye on in this game. Number 10 is Keandre Thomas. Rico Gafford was not at practice the other day, and there's a chance that he may not play in this game, which would be a really tough blow for his roster chances. And while Keandre came up with that insane one-handed interception in practice, I think he would be behind both Gafford and Keandre Thomas for that number 6 corner spot, which could mean that Keandre Thomas is actually the guy that gets it. He's been good on special teams. He's been good in coverage. If he goes out and has a great game, this could be his opportunity to, again, lay claim to a roster spot that really there's not like a, whether it's Gafford or Thomas or Ento, there's nobody that's gone out and claimed that spot yet, right? If there's anyone that has, I think it's been Keandre Thomas. I think there's a good chance he makes it as the number 6 guy, and this is another player who has an opportunity to go out and show out, and whether it's for Green Bay or some other team, say, hey, you better come get me because I can play in this league. He's been impressive so far, and he could put another feather in his cap for, another solid performance in Game 3 of the preseason. Next up is safety, Micah Abernathy, Innis Gaines, Tariq Carpenter. And it's interesting here in that Innis Gaines, an undrafted player from last season, and Micah Abernathy, a guy they bring up right before the first preseason game or sign right before the first preseason game, both seem to be ahead of Tariq Carpenter, a 7th round pick that they drafted this season. I like Innis Gaines. I like Micah Abernathy. Both have caught my eye. I think there's opportunity here for a number 4 and maybe even number 5 safety. Maybe 2 of these guys could actually make it on the roster. We'll have to sort of wait and see. But this is a huge opportunity to compete for these 3. These 3 should get a ton of playing time in this game. And I'm interested to see who responds, who goes and balls out, and who can have the best game to really put themselves in the lead for that, maybe 4th or 5th safety spot. So we'll be huge at safety. Number 12 is Tyler Davis. Tyler Davis has had a very rough offseason, no two ways about it. Had his best day of practice, was the player of the day at practice on Tuesday. Can he rebound and have a really nice final preseason game to make up for some of the miscues and mistakes in the first 2 preseason games? And if he could, that I'm sure would give Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur a lot more confidence that he's trending in the right direction and maybe be more willing to give him a 53-man roster spot. And last but not least, is there anybody that just has that wow performance? Is there anyone that has a 8-catch, 100-yard, 2-touchdown game? Does Jordan Love have that wow performance? Is it Caleb Jones at left tackle where he just dominates the entirety of the game? Does Micah Abernathy come up with another interception and maybe some pass breakups? Is it Keandre Thomas who maybe gets a pick 6 and takes it to the house? Is there a player on special teams who gets tackle after tackle? Is there any wow performance that you just watch and be like, well, they can't cut that guy now because he looks awesome? And usually, sometimes there is, right? I know Desmond Howard's sort of the old, adage here of like a player who, went out, had the huge return in special teams, gets on the roster, and then of course makes a huge difference in the Super Bowl. But is there anybody that has that type of performance that maybe somebody we didn't even name, maybe someone that we didn't even think had the opportunity to earn a roster spot? Sometimes that wild performance can get you there, and it just puts you in a totally different light with the coaches and the GMs and the scouts. So does anyone else have that? So the 13 things that I will be watching, and I guess number 14 would be injuries, right? You still don't want to see any injuries, especially this close to the regular season. But Jordan Love, special teams, edge rushers, Wyatt versus Karlaftis, Tyler Goodson versus Patrick Taylor, Christian Watson's debut, maybe? Samori Toure, Caleb Jones and Rasheed Walker, Jonathan Ford versus Jack Heflin, Keandre Thomas, the safety battle, Tyler Davis, the wild performance, and please, oh please, no injuries at this point in the season to anyone. Turn injuries off in this game for both teams. That is going to do it for me today. Enjoy Packers Chiefs. Should be as good of a third preseason game as you can possibly have. Like I said, there's a lot to watch in this game, and I think it should be fun to kind of go through all these different things. And it is a little bit more fun when you have a young up-and-coming quarterback that you have the opportunity to keep an eye on and see how he's progressing. That makes preseason a lot more fun, and that should make this game a lot more fun. But either way, there's a lot to watch in this game, and hopefully this is helpful for what to keep an eye on as we get into the third and fourth quarter of said third preseason game. Thanks so much for joining me today. Always appreciate it. We'll be right back here to break down everything that we saw from Packers Chiefs, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.